Hello, ladies and gents. For any regular listeners of my podcast, I'm back. Touch wood. Um, I have not uploaded for a couple of months now, and that is just purely down to new commitments. So I have been working two new jobs. One as the editorial assistant for, I believe, the most read sports magazine in the UK, in BBC Match of the Day magazine, and also working on a freelance basis for BBC Radio Merseyside, predominantly with the sports team, who I cannot thank enough for how they've taken me under their wing. And yeah, I'll be producing the coverage of Everton versus Wolves this upcoming weekend. And little side note there, but this is just to say apologies for not uploading as regularly as I should have. I always aim to upload weekly, and I think it's been like 2 or 3 months now, maybe even four actually. I think my last one was Balagay last November. But that isn't to say that that's not to say I've given up on it at all. I love doing this. In the research and the preparation for this episode, I've sort of rediscovered how much I do love doing my podcast. And as I've always said, it's something that I do aspire to do for a living maybe one day. So on a weekly and maybe even daily basis, because I surely love just sitting down and talking to people, hearing their stories and having deep, meaningful conversations. Um, and today's episode is with someone who's been on the podcast before, who I thoroughly enjoy listening to his stories and his experiences of his extensive career in broadcast media, Mr. Elton Welsby. So I sincerely hope that you enjoy this episode. Elton Welsby, I believe it's been over a year since we last spoke. How the hell are you?
I'm very well, Max. Thanks. Yeah. Good. As an Evertonian, not so good. No, but in myself, my private life, everything else is absolutely superb. Thank you. And
Brilliant.
yourself. I
Very.
believe you're working for Radio Merseyside a bit now.
Yep, I've been very, very busy. Basically, in January, it's just been a bit of a roller coaster. I've essentially started two new jobs. I'm working full time for BBC Match of the Day magazine, which is aimed at a younger audience. So, like
Rules me out.
kids, kids and teenagers, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the most read sports magazine in the UK, which was a bit of a surprise to hear. So
Great.
I've
Great.
been
Well
very
than you.
blessed. I've been very blessed to get a job there, and also I've caught the attention of Radio Merseyside, so I've been working freelance with the sports team there as well.
Good man. Well, it's a long road to the top, but it sounds to me like you're going the right way.
Thank you, sir. That certainly means a lot coming from someone like you. Um, I mean,
Oh, keep the flattery coming. I'm all right. I
uh,
love being
no, you certainly
right.
you deserve it, mate. Given the career that you had, honestly, I mean, this is, as I mentioned to you, this is my first podcast back in a couple of months, as I've been so busy, and I'm very pleased that you've taken the time out to speak to me. So thank you for
Oh,
that.
no,
I appreciate
no.
it. Um, so I guess there are plenty of things to talk about,
Oh,
but we can start. We can start with the football club, which is often the bane of our lives. Everton suffered their heaviest defeat of a dismal Premier League season, losing 5-0 away to Tottenham Hotspur.
could have been 9.
Elton, vent away. The floor is yours.
It could have been 9. I mean, apart from throwing in the second goal, which is maybe a bit harsh to put it in those terms, but Jordan Pickford had a great game. He you know, he kept them out at the start of the second half. Wow, this is Blitzkrieg all over again. Oh, it was the defending was shocking. Um, Michael Keane should never wear an Everton shirt again. Mason Holgate in an emergency. But Michael Keane for the third goal, that was Harry Kane's first goal. Keane was bullied by Harry Kane. He was pathetic. He made a half-hearted attempt to run back. He paused during that half-hearted attempt to appeal for offside, as did Mason Holgate, by the way. And of course, Harry Kane finished it with a flop. Now, there is absolutely no point in appealing for offside anymore, because if it is offside, it will be revealed on VAR. So that was a wasted millisecond. I don't think he'd have caught him anyway, to be truthful. But at least look like you're trying, man. Good God. A lot of them. Frank said afterwards, Anthony Gordon and one other, maybe two others, didn't give up. That means 7 or 8 outfield players gave up. Sounded like Brian Clough, wasn't it? Right. It was embarrassing.
So I'll paint the picture for you, Elton. So I had to take my little sister to her football training, which was 7 till 8. So
you should have taken her to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. She could have played if she'd have done better.
So we were finishing up at about 8 o'clock, and I was like, "Come on, get your skates on in the car." Radio Merseyside on in the car. Seemed like we had a competitive and relatively decent opening 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, it was. Absolutely.
So my question is essentially, then we seem to just capitulate. Obviously, Michael Keane scores an own goal, then Son gets a second, and at that point, I just turned the radio off because I didn't want to listen to it anymore.
It got worse.
I come in, put it on, saw that they'd scored the third, and then just downright refused to watch the rest of it. My question is, as pretty much I didn't catch the majority of the game, was it Everton playing so poorly, or was it Spurs turning up and having a good game?
It was both. Although I think if we hadn't have played as badly, so inept as we were last night, I don't think Spurs would have looked like world beaters, which they did, because we allowed them to.
Yeah,
they were terrible. The midfield was shocking. As I say, the only guy, the outfield players, for me, that came out with any real credit was Anthony Gordon, because, yes, he tried, and he's getting a reputation of being possibly a little bit selfish. I mean, last night, who the hell is he going to pass to? There's only Richie who was worth his salt in terms of putting in a shift. DCL was just way off. Way off the pace now, whether that injury, I'd like to think he's not fit, because if it wasn't that, if it wasn't a case of fitness, then it was a case of he couldn't give a shit. Now that hurts. That hurts as an Evertonian.
Definitely. And my biggest bone to pick, as I saw with the third goal, is that we were playing with a very, very high line from the defense, which when
it worked for 10. We what we did for 10 minutes, possibly 15, up until the goal, the first goal, we did well. We pressed high. We had the high line, which is very, very dangerous against Tottenham when you've got Harry Kane.
Spurs, you cannot play a high line against Spurs. That was my bone to pick, especially.
One of the main reasons for that is that Harry Kane, who's a great number 9, he can also play the number 10 role. And it's like when he drops back into an advanced midfield position and starts slicing balls in behind our fullbacks, we were thinking, well, he shouldn't be doing that. You know, he's a number 9. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, we'll have to talk about something happier. Oh no, it was terrible. It was absolutely shocking, awful, disgraceful, disgusting.
Yeah, I think just to finish my point off.
Yeah.
some responsibility does, of course, have to lie with Frank Lampard for that decision to play a high line. When you've got a back four of who was it? Seamus Coleman, who is way beyond his prime years. He's not the same player.
It's a shame, but it's a shame, but you're right.
God bless, what a player he was in his day, but unfortunately, just not have the same pitch as he used to.
We don't owe him anything, do we? I mean, £60,000 he cost. Good heavens above.
Exactly.
Don't owe him anything.
What a player!
And he shouldn't be in the position he's in. His legs have gone, and he's never been the same since that awful tackle that he received whilst playing for the Republic of Ireland. He's never been the same player since then. But at the moment, he's totally exposed and let down by those around him.
Yeah, and that brings me to the rest of the defence. Michael Keane and Mason Holgate in central defence, not blessed with pace. They're
clueless.
Clueless. I still
clueless.
Have a thread of hope for Mason Holgate. I think Mason Holgate has shown glimmers of a decent standard of Premier League player. Given his background, the fact that he came through at Barnsley, there are similarities to John Stones, a defender that I really did adore when he played for Everton. And I would hope, fingers crossed, touch wood, that Mason Holgate does eventually develop into that ilk of a player. But
no.
when you've got him next to Michael Keane, who Frank Lampard has come out in the media and said has been unwell for a while.
The best thing Holgate did was nearly knock Keane out when he cleared that ball and it hit Keane in the face. And after that, they said, "Oh, concussion injury." It wasn't. I just said flippantly, "Oh, Keane's not come out. He's got a headache." Frank should have just said he didn't come out for the second half because he was that crap in the first half. He was a liability. And that's the truth.
Yeah.
He was feeling well, my arse.
Yeah, quite simply, that they are quite inept at performing the duties of centre half, more to my point, at playing a high line. And then John Joe Kenny out of possession. God bless, he's been played out of position a number of times in his recent appearances for the club, and has shown some sort of improvement have we seen from him in the past. And
I think his best performances for Everton over a few years now has been recently at left back.
Yeah.
For me, he was the pick of the back four, which doesn't say much at all about the other three, by the way. But I would say that anyone could sort of say, well, I didn't do too bad there under the circumstances, but then it will be John Joe Kenny.
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't think you can say I didn't do too bad there, but concede 5 goals. I just don't simply think that's possible.
No. Listen, I'm picking at straws, and as Frank himself said after the game, no positives from that game. But I'm just saying, out of the back four, John Joe Kenny was just about mediocre.
Yeah.
The others were far less than mediocre. It was the naivety in that. I felt sorry for the thousands of fans who had to go and watch those misfits and cheats at Tottenham come back, and some of them had bad journeys by all accounts. Looking at Twitter today, some of them had bad journeys. One guy was saying he didn't get home till 7 o'clock in the morning.
Jesus.
Maybe some of that was self-inflicted. I don't know. But that's not the point. I wonder whether all those fans were thinking, God, what we've spent, however much to get there, to get in, to have food, hospitality, whatever you want to call it. I wonder how they were totting it up on the way back and thinking, and the players we've just been watching, probably the minimum any one of them would take home in a week will be £100,000. That is unacceptable, especially in the social climate in which we're existing at the moment. It is totally unacceptable. If you're going to get paid fortunes for playing football, fine. Good luck to you. But try. Play the football with some spirit. Play the football the way you care, the way the fans care about the club. You put that into your game, and no one will argue if you just have a bad game and you're off form for a game. Okay, that happens in life. Some of how they're probably laughing, taking as you know what, saying, "Oh well, yeah, we didn't do too well tonight, but that's another £100,000 in the bank," and in some cases a lot more. I know that, and possibly in the case of Anthony Gordon and John Joe Kenny, probably very little compared to some of the others out there. I think they're on something like 40 odd thousand a week. I think. I'm not too sure. I'm not concerned about that. I don't care what you get paid, whether it's £500,000 a week, whether it's £10,000 a week, whatever it is. Just go and play like it means something to you. And last night, it didn't mean anything to anyone, apart from, as I say, Anthony Gordon, possibly John Joe Kenny. It was terrible.
Yeah, as you.
Oh, sorry, I'll let Richarlison off the hook. I'll let Richarlison off the hook because he always tries. He always puts a shift in. Nothing worked for him last night. Having said that, the midfield never got a decent pass to him, etc., etc. One shot we had, unless you count Allen's near the end from 35 yards, and it went 35 yards over. There was one of the shots, and that was Dominic Calvert-Lewin when he pulled a ball across the face of the goal, when he should have certainly hit the target. Now, whether Lloris made the save or not, we don't know. That's hypothetical. There you go. Am I ranting enough? Am I being too harsh here?
No, it's the platform for you to do so, Elton. You're very entitled. So, and as you've painted there,
I don't find it fun, by the way.
Oh no,
I don't find this fun.
Of course not.
I enjoy talking to you, and I enjoy getting things off my chest. Yeah, but I don't find it fun because we're talking about a club I've loved since 1962, looking like the dog and duck.
Right, because this draws me to my next point, Elton, because as you write, one of the points I think you made very accurately there is, although the team may let them down sometimes, the fans certainly don't, given the following that we do have up and down the country. And one of the things that I want to ask you about is, right, I was born in 1998, so I did not, God bless, I didn't experience the relegation battles of the 1990s. So I wanted to ask you, is what we're experiencing today anywhere near or just as bad as what we went through in the 90s?
Well, of course it is, because we realistically can go down.
Yeah.
And yes, we could, but for that sort of infamous game against Wimbledon, we would have gone down that year. But yes, the only thing about this one is that we have enough points available to actually secure our status in the Premier League. That, I'm convinced. I think we've got 15 points available at home for us to sort of hope that we win our home games, because we've looked like winning our home games. And then it's the away games. I don't care who we're playing away from home. Play like that, we're going to get beaten. So the only points we're going to get on board are those at home. And listen. I think, yes, here we go. Wolves, Newcastle, United, Chelsea, Brentford. 5-6 points.
All tough games.
Every game is tough. Every game is tough from here on in. and the pressure, certainly when we're next away from home, the pressure is going to be quite phenomenal. We need leaders. We need leaders out there. We need people are going to say to someone who maybe is not having a great game, but is trying to come on, you know,
Yeah.
not go out like a shower of wimps. That's what I saw last night, a shower of wimps.
That that is that is the thing that does scare me, Elton, is that
I don't think we'll go down.
you
I
know
actually don't. No, I don't know whether it's my heart ruling my head. I, I just have got the vibes. I've got a feeling. It's in my gut as well as my heart that we will survive.
is that just because
Yeah.
we've never been relegated before? Is that
Well, as you know, I've been watching Everton going to the old ladies since 1962, and I've never seen us relegated. So maybe that's part of it. I just can't envisage Everton in a division other than the top flight. It just to me, it's just totally alien. Now, maybe I'm being stupid because you hear of the clubs, big clubs in not that not that long ago in relative terms. Wolves, Forest now, I
Nottingham Forest,
suppose,
yeah,
Aston Villa.
Sunderland?
These clubs that have gone literally went to the pits.
Mm.
Um, Everyone said, "Oh, they're too good, too big a club. They've got too much heritage. They've got too much history. To sort of end up in the second division." Hey, they're real. It does happen.
Mm. My
It
concern,
does happen.
my
But as I say, I've just got a feeling that we will survive. And I can't apply, Max, I can't apply any logic to that at all, other than that's what I feel. Now, whether that's feeling of optimism, it certainly is. Whether it's a feeling of realism, I don't know. Why am I laughing?
it's absolutely terrifying to me. It is. It's absolutely
Oh,
terrifying.
it is, because when you look at the individuals, the squad, and how much money we spent to accumulate this shower of dross, it is frightening. It is very, very frightening. But as I say, I just got this feeling we won't go down.
Okay, so going off your feeling, I want to get your verdict on the appointment of Frank Lampard as Everton manager, because the last time
Very good,
but
good.
last time I did a podcast, Rafael Benitez was still Everton manager. Now
Yeah,
undergone the recruitment process, and out of the candidates available, I do think that Frank Lampard was probably the better option of those that were available. Um, Credit where credit is due. He gave an exceptional account of himself to the media, as always, as you'd expect. I think he's
yeah.
spoken very well. He's a realist. He understands the situation that he's involved in, the immediacy of the situation that he's involved in, and how he is going to motivate this group of players to get out of this situation is still something that I fail to see. Out of the 7 games that we've played so far under Lampard, we've had 3 wins and 4 losses. The wins have been mostly emphatic, of course, the 4-1 at home against Brentford, the 3-0 at home against Leeds, and surprisingly, the most difficult of those was the 2-0 at home against Bournemouth, non-league in the FA
Yeah.
Cup.
Mm.
The 3 defeats have all been really underwhelming performances away from home, of course, with the exception of Manchester City at home, which surprisingly, again, out of the bunch, was probably the game we gave the best account of ourselves.
Without a doubt.
Goodison Park. But it's a hard question to pose, because I think the short term is so daunting, and so it needs addressing so immediately, that the short term really is all that matters at the present moment. But do you think
Mm.
the long term Frank Lampard's appointment will work out for Everton Football Club.
Well, I'm just glad the Portuguese guy didn't get it, because I thought he did. He talked a bad game as well, and he talked about it on the Thursday before the Friday meeting, the so-called meeting with Duncan, Frank, and himself. With Mashiri, and he talked himself out of it there, to be truthful. But even still, his credentials were pretty awful. Frank's credentials as a manager aren't great, but he's not been a manager for long. And I think the likes of Mashiri, Bill, I'm sure it was Bill, by the way, totally against Benitez. Mashiri just overruled everybody and said, right, he's got it. Yeah. So I think of the ones available at the time of the appointment, which was the very last day of January, I think Evertonians, I certainly did, breathed a huge sigh of relief that it had actually gone to Frank. Mourinho was spoken to, that I know, but he didn't feel, he wants to come back to the Premier, but he didn't feel that he'd actually made any kind of impression or good impression at Roma. So I think he felt he certainly had more work to do there. I don't know whether we spoke to anyone other than that who are well known in footballing circles. I don't know. But I mean, we don't forget, we got Ancelotti, and the world of football was astonished that we got Ancelotti. And it turned out what we got was a guy out of his depth in the shallow end. That was the fact.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'd go and win the Champions League with Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, whatever. But actually forge a team to stay in the Premier League with players not of the quality that he's used to was just too much for him.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what, when Real Madrid came to him and said, you fancy coming back to us? Oh, he must have thought Christmas is a come up one.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement on Carlo Ancelotti. I do feel like he revealed himself in a sense in the manner that he left Everton Football Club. A lot is spoken about that great start to last season, where we were, top of the league for a couple of months, and then we were second on Christmas. But ultimately, it was his team and his tactics that ultimately led us to finishing, what was it, 10th, 11th, which was...
Listen, the last... We didn't have a bad start under Benitez, but apart from that, the last 12 months and a bit have been absolutely depressing.
Yeah, without doubt.
And once it became quite apparent that like Ancelotti before him, Rafa was also out of his depth, didn't understand what was going on. It's been a torrid time. My admiration is not for Evertonians like myself, who've been supporting the club for a long, long time and have seen great success. I was 63, the cup in 66, the championship in 1970, 1984 FA Cup, 85. What a year. 86, Lineker's year.
87.
Should have been a lot better than it was. And then 87. So I've enjoyed the highs. My admiration goes out to those Evertonians who were born around about 1990-ish and onwards. Hey, it's been nothing but turmoil, but they stuck with the club through thick and thin. I really do admire them. It must have been so easy to, I'll go support someone. Can't be asked. You chose not. I mean, it's kind of the old once a blue, always a blue sort of thing.
Oh well,
You
and
know,
I think if I dared to support anyone else, I think my granddad or my dad would have given me a good hiding.
I didn't have that at all. I became an Evertonian by chance, in a sense. We'd moved to Liverpool with my mum and dad in 1962, and first thing with dad, get tickets for the match or go and see the match. And we went to Liverpool. The first available Saturday we had, we went to Liverpool and we couldn't get in. Of course, I was 11, gutted, blah blah blah. So my dad said, "Right, I'm not taking chances. Next week we'll get tickets." And he actually got tickets for Everton off a guy called Sid Moss, who was a garage owner opposite where we lived. And Sid Moss, because of his connections, the director of Liverpool, he actually managed to get us tickets in the Bullens Road end for the Everton game against Cardiff. Now, when you're 11 and you go to watch a team for the first time with the prospect of being a lifelong supporter, let's say, when they win 8-3, there is absolutely no doubt in your mind that you're not going to go down any other route than a route in blue and white. And that was the case. We beat Cardiff 8-3. Alex Young was just amazing. And that was it. And I feel so sorry, but I have so much admiration for those fans who've never seen anything like that. You know,
Yeah.
I have to say, in the foreseeable future, they're not likely to either. Terrible.
Call me delusional, Elton, but oh, I don't know actually because of the caliber of the teams that are left in the competition. But I feel like if we beat Crystal Palace in the quarterfinals,
Oh, but yeah.
hang on, wait there. If you put yourself on mute again, you'll have to unmute yourself. There we go.
It was a very familiar number there. That was called suspected spam. No, forget the cup. Forget it. It doesn't matter because okay. Let's say we pull one off against Crystal Palace in the cup. Yeah, there's the attraction of going to Wembley, I suppose, to the semi um, against. Oh, it'll be Liverpool, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it will be, won't it?
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Oh, it's written. I'm just amazed. When they had the draw before the tie with Boreham Wood, uh, the draw before the tie with Boreham Wood, that I'm thinking it's going to be Liverpool. I'm waiting for it to come out. Gareth Southgate picking the balls out. Only 8. I'm thinking, oh, here we go. Liverpool. Liverpool will play. Everton. Oh, yeah. Oh, God. Anyway, it didn't happen. That's silly thinking. But, whoever we get in the semi. Yeah.
Well, let's not look past Crystal Palace because they have beat us at Selhurst Park already this season and have give a really good account of themselves. I do like Crystal Palace out of the London teams. I do think I've got the most respect for Crystal Palace. But on that note of the draw in the Boreham Wood game, I do just want to say I relocated my season ticket for the Boreham Wood game and they give me a ticket for the main stand. And so I'm going up the flight of stairs, and I didn't quite know where this this ticket was. So I showed it to the steward. I went, row S, where am I best going for that? And he pointed in the direction of the media area. He said, you've got to go through the media, like round the media area, and you're just in front of them. So I literally squoze, because obviously Goodison, it's really tight, compact. Squoze past, all the people in the media area, like their bags down the aisle. And I've gone to my row, and there's just short row, about 4 or 5 seats. No one else was sat on that row but me. I had Kevin Campbell for TalkSport over my right shoulder, and I had Barry Horn over my left shoulder. I'm not quite sure who he was commentating for, but I do have to say, I know it wasn't the greatest of games, and we should have saw it off a lot sooner than we did. But that will go down as one of the most memorable games I've ever been to, purely because I had the running commentary in me.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I essentially got the draw from the fella commentating for TalkSport. And I found it quite surprising that none of the potential, essentially, the big Premier League teams were drawn against each other. So you've still got Chelsea, City, Liverpool in the mix, who no doubt will have to beat it if
Oh, no.
we have to get past Crystal Palace. So yeah, you're probably right. I should probably put my cup aspirations to bed, shouldn't I?
No, but don't have a distraction, because the kind of players that we've got, I could see them not being up for a game at Tottenham, not being up for a game at Palace or wherever you care to name. But the law of going to Wembley for a semi, whatever, I could see that distracting them from the matter in hand, which is survival in the Premier League. That's the most. If you said to me now, do you want to progress in the cup, even win the cup, or get relegated? No contest. Ditch the cup.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Now, moving on, I wanted to take some time about take some time to talk about some sad news that came through today. Today being the 8th of March, about the passing of Gordon Lee,
Oh yeah,
former footballer and manager, most notably to us, of course, for Everton between 1977 and 1981.
indeed.
I've heard a lot about that team in the 70s, Elton, but what were your encounters with Gordon like?
Gordon. Gordon was very uncompromising. I've just got a quote here from. He used to manage Port Vale.
Mm-hmm.
That's how he started in management.
Yep.
And they played West Ham in the cup one day, and Ron Greenwood said this afterwards: "It was the most blatant, calculated intimidation I've ever seen anywhere in the world." Now, this was Gordon. Gordon was about physical football. He was about endurance. He wasn't about stars and flair. In fact, he once said, "You stars are in the sky, flares are on the bottom of your pants." He wanted workaholics, basically. That's because he was one.
Mm-hmm.
He had a running hate ship, I suppose, is one word. Although I hate the word hate. With John Neal, the ex-Wrexham manager, passed away now. They were fullbacks at Aston Villa. Gordon was like I'll crack anyone that comes anywhere near me. John Neal was more the sort of Jalmar Santos fullback, elegant, graceful, good passer, blah, 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 but not much for getting stuck in, which was Gordon's trademark, really. So he became known through that as that kind of manager, as well as as well as a player. He once said to Mike Pedgick, we were going to play Man United, and he said, "Big danger to us." He said, "He's that Steve Coppell. Steve Coppell, BA type, injure him physically." How else do you injure a person than physically? But that was Gordon. I wouldn't say an educated man, but having said that, great personality, great company, but sometimes odd company. You think, how did he not know that, or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're coming back on the coach from Ipswich. This will be around about 77. Now, if I get some of the facts wrong, I apologise, but the gist of it is absolutely what happened. I used to go on the team coach and come back on the team coach, and we were coming back from Ipswich, and I think we'd won 1-0. We won anyway, and the winning goal, whether it's 1-0 or 2-1, was scored by Duncan McKenzie. Now, Gordon loved Duncan as a guy, which goes against popular beliefs, but he loved him as a bloke. but he was not Gordon's type of footballer. And on the way back, I was sat with him, and he was saying, "You fucking don't," and he swore a lot. So if I'm going to do Gordon the way he spoke, I'm afraid I'm going to have to swear a lot, but it's in context.
No problem at
And
all.
he said, "You fucking, Duncan McKenzie, fucking hell, fucking." It's one of them, just mumbling.
Mm.
And I said, "Excuse me, Gordon, but he has just scored the winner in the game that we're coming back from." He said, "You fucking not going to count that, are you?" Because it was the most extraordinary goal. Because what happened was, it was a quagmire of a pitch. Ball came over the top and stuck in the pitch, in the mud, kind of. And Duncan was running onto it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Duncan was running onto it, and he sort of ran past the ball. So he stopped, came back, and started dribbling away from the Ipswich goal. And then turned and then went running back towards the Ipswich goal. The mud playing a part in all this stuff. And eventually the ball went over the line. Gordon didn't count that as a goal, even though it won us the game. He wouldn't think, "Oh well, Duncan, maybe I'll let him off." But no. There was another same journey. Sat with him, and he says, "Tell me this." I said, "Well," and he said, "Who would win, 10 Terry Darricott, or 10 Andy King? 10 Terry Darricotts played against 10 Andy King. Who would win?" I know what he wanted me to say. I kind of opted out. Fucking Terry Darricott. He gets stuck in it. Does he get stuck in? Andy King. Very, very funny guy. Salad on the way back on this coach trip. So I said, "Do you want any coleslaw, Gordon?" And he said, "What's coleslaw?" Oh, one more, Max.
Well,
I must tell you, I got to know him very, very well.
yeah.
No doubt about that. If we had a dinner party one night at Jimmy McGregor's house. Our ex-physio, Jimmy, was also physio at Man United after that. And there was a dinner party with wives, me and my good lady, Steve Coppell, and his lady, Steve Highway, and Gordon and his lady.
Mm-hmm.
So there was 10 of us around the table. Gordon never stopped swearing. And Jane, Steve's wife, every now and again just sort of looked at me and said, "Is he always like this?" And I sort of went, "Yeah, he is actually." And which takes me to this interview I did, because I did know him awfully well, and I found him marvelous company. I was doing this interview for him for Radio City,
Mm-hmm.
and it was after a game where we drew 3-3 with Wolves. If I remember rightly, Mick Buckley was one of us. Anyway, we drew this game 3-3. Great. It was a great match of the day. That would probably be the lead match on Match of the Day,
Yeah.
But it was so entertaining, end to end, 6 goals in all. And I was doing a live interview with Gordon down in the corridor by the dressing rooms, which going live on Radio City. And we knew each other so well. It was like the microphone didn't exist. It was just like a normal chat that we'd be having, but it wasn't. It was a live after match reaction from the Everton manager, Gordon Lee.
Yeah.
And it was 3-3, great game. And he was like, yes, I can see that. Yes, good game. Match of the day. But he was not overly enthusiastic. I said, "Gordon, is what's the matter? You don't seem quite as excited as everybody else to witness such a great game." He said, "Well, it was pretty one team let me down on the fixed odds." I made a big mistake by saying, "This is live, Radio City, folks. I kid you not." "Which one was that, Gordon?" And he went, "Sten fucking out, bastard Muir." Gordon Lee,
Oh
rest in peace.
God.
Lovely, lovely guy.
Rest in peace. Now,
An entertainer.
right, people.
Although he didn't know it. He didn't know he was so entertaining. That was the thing about it. Shanks, he knew. Bill Shankly, because he said things and he knew that it was funny, good, entertaining stuff. He knew that. Gordon didn't. He didn't. Lovely guy. Oh, yeah.
So I've heard. Now, right, people will say typical Evertonians taking any opportunity to talk about their history, but I have heard about how he took us to a League Cup final against Villa, I believe, which needed two.
Well, actually, now again, I think I'm right in saying Billy Bingham got us to the final and was sacked. Is that right?
Did Gordon Lee take over from? I think he took over from the semi, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, okay, but we were virtually,
Okay.
yeah, we were virtually there.
So that was Gordon Lee's only cup final in charge of Everton. So I had to had to mention that.
Well, we finished third in the league. Which year was that? Hang on, was that would be 78 or 79, was it? We finished third in the league.
Something along those lines, because there were
That was his best league finish anyway. And of course, we got to the semi-final of the FA Cup, and we played West Ham. Yeah, go on.
I was just going to say there were 2 top 4 finishes and 2 FA Cup semi-finals. From what I know, there were some fabulous players: Andy King, Bob Latchford, of course, Dave Thomas. He brought through a hell of a lot of lads who were to play in the 80s.
Yeah.
Graham Sharp.
Well, he bought, Gordon, if for nothing else, Everton is forever grateful that he bought Graham Sharp from Dumbarton for us. Introduced Kevin Ratcliffe to first team football as a very mediocre left back, who became one of the greatest centre halves in British football history, basically. Strange, isn't it?
Yeah. Is it fair to say that
Oh, that's right. Sorry, I was talking to him shortly after we'd been beaten by West Ham in the semi-final, and Frank Lampard had scored the winning goal for West Ham.
Senior.
And I just say, because we were talking to him, and he just went, "Fucking Frank Lampard." You wouldn't say that now, would you?
No, but
Frank Lampard Senior.
Of course. Is it fair to say that Gordon laid the groundwork for Kendall's success, of which was to come in the following year?
No. I don't think it is, actually. I can see because Howard took over. But Howard had 2 very strange years with 1 or 2 funny decisions in the transfer market, apart from Andy Gray. Howard was the only person who wanted to sign Andy Gray, only because he failed his medical. And so, what the wages were in those days, I haven't got a clue. But, I'm sure that the chairman, Mr. Carter, would have said, "Well, hang on just a minute. We can't be paying this guy X thousand pound a week if he's not going to play, because his knee's gone, shattered."
Yeah.
And Howard just sort of said, "We'll be all right. He'll be fine." He actually said as well, is that if anything, he'll be better in the dressing room than on the pitch. And again, he was kind of proved right, but Andy was fantastic on the pitch, and he was wonderful in the dressing room.
Yeah, I think the argument is there that Andy Gray was the catalyst for the winning mentality that came into the club.
Yes. Oh God, born winner.
Yeah.
How many have we got today? Born winners.
Oh, don't.
None.
God. So, just on that note, I want to take the opportunity to pass on the sympathies to and best wishes to Gordon Lee's family during.
Oh, very much so. Yeah.
It is always tough, enduring a loss and grieving.
I'll tell you just another brief one about Gordon and how popular he was with the Merseyside press. We could call ourselves a rat pack back then. Me from Radio City, whoever it was from Radio Merseyside, group officers earlier, or Eddie Hemmings, Colin Wood, the Mail, John Keefe, the Express, etc. And we were his first press conference in his office at Belfield. And I forget who asked the question, but they said, well, okay, Gordon, you just got here, first press conference.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you buy? And he sort of went, Louis, Clements, Neil, listed the Liverpool team. And we were like, can't say that. An Everton manager can't say that. And we all met up outside afterward. I did an interview on tape with him, which contained this remarkable list of players, all of whom played over the park. But everyone got together and said, "Look, we can't use this. It's going to damage him."
Yeah.
And he doesn't deserve that. So that was never used. I didn't use it on the wireless. The guys never put it in the papers because we took an instant liking to the guy, and we thought, well, this is getting him off to the worst possible start if we lead on this. You can see in a back page headline, Gordon Lee, to turn Everton round, I would buy Liverpool. You can't do that. You can't say that. And he didn't realise what he was saying.
Yeah. I don't. That
Oh,
would.
sorry, the relevance of what he was saying.
No, of course. That rarely would not happen today. Needless to say, because most of what a manager sees is in a very controlled environment and is recorded live more often than not. But that trust between the media not to publish something like that would not happen today, would it?
No, good heavens above, no. But I like to think we were all nice guys. The Mersey Mafia, the Rat Pack, we were nice guys. I mean, if someone got a really good story, maybe it was a bit controversial, then yeah, go with it. But if everyone had got the same story together, then there would be a huddle afterwards to say, well, what are you using? What do you think was the best line? All right, let's do this.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd all agree. So virtually this 5 tabloid papers the following morning, the same Everton story would be, or Liverpool story, the same story would be on each of the back page of each of those papers. But I say, in this case, to a man, we all said, look, let's just pretend he never ever said it.
Yeah. God
To
bless.
this day.
Yeah. God bless. I think that was the right decision and reflects very well on your part. I do like Mersey Mafia. I think I might use that going forward. That's a good.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you that. Mike Ellis, the Sun, Chris James of the Daily Mirror, Colin Wood, the Daily Mail, John Keefe of the Express, Matt Darcy of the Star. Oh, we little gang we were.
Yeah. I do want
to. And away trips in Europe with Liverpool. Oh dear. Wow. Good job I don't drink now.
I do want to ask you about those experiences working across print, radio, and television. But one of the things that I initially reached out to you about to arrange this podcast for is you, like many other Evertonians, particularly during these very low times that we've been going through, and even more so during the managerial appointment, have attended and been a part of Twitter Spaces quite regularly, which I think is a genius bit of technology because it's essentially.
I've been on a few myself. I've been invited on a few, and I've also done a few where I've just thought, well, I've got something to say. I want to say it. You know.
As I say, I think it's a genius bit of technology because it's essentially a radio football phone-in for everyone.
I don't understand it. The technical side, I do not understand how we've managed to do this today. To me, it's a technological miracle. I'm a technophobe. I don't mind admitting it.
But one of the things that you mentioned in a Twitter space that you were involved in very casually that not many people cottoned onto, which as soon as I heard it, I messaged you straight away and went, I want to talk to you about this. You mentioned that you had the opportunity to speak with Rinus Michels.
I did. Indeed, I did. Yeah. 1988.
To me is absolutely incredible. Just to give you a bit of context, when I was young,
Well,
so
that name might have got it. Yeah, you fill in because that name might go over a lot of people's heads.
so it will, and it shouldn't, because I'll just give you some context of how I became aware of the significance of Rinus Michels. So you said 62 when you went to watch Everton against Cardiff. You were what, around 11, 12 years old?
Yeah.
So when I was about that age, maybe a little bit older, I used to be glued to all different types of sports programs on the telly. One of them being Sky Sports did a regular show called Football's Greatest, where they would talk about, some of the greatest players of all time from different eras. They talk about Pele, Eusebio, George Best, Ronaldinho, Ronaldo, Brazilian Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, and they'd also do it about managers. And you can take your pick of the great managers. But
Helmut Schön, etc.
yeah,
Yes, absolutely.
so they did a show based on the career and life of Rinus Michels, and
Oh,
so I've always been inclined to I've throughout my life I've always sort of romanticized Barcelona. I grew up believing, and still maybe do. Arguably, I think I'd pit Johan Cruyff up against Rinus Michels now, because the way I sort of processed it watching the story of Rinus Michels is Rinus Michels is Johan Cruyff before Johan Cruyff.
no. Well, Rinus Michels was the field marshal of the Dutch Renaissance in
Yep,
football,
yep.
and
So
Cruyff,
just to give a bit,
Cruyff
just
was
to
his general on the pitch.
just to give
That's what it was.
just a bit of give a bit of context for the listeners, right? Rinus Michels spent
Mm.
his entire playing career at Ajax. He managed many notable teams, including Ajax, of course, Barcelona, and the Netherlands. And if I'm not mistaken, Rinus Michels was the one that gave Johan Cruyff his debut for Ajax. Uh,
Yes, he did. But that would be 1972, I think.
So this was the man.
Scrawny kid,
Yeah.
scrawny kid, couldn't play.
So I remember hearing that in the program, how Rinus Michels argued Johan Cruyff's case, as many people did believe it, as you say, scrawny, not up to much
It
fit.
was, yeah.
But Rinus Michels is basically the godfather of modern football.
He isn't he?
And
You've been doing your homework, haven't you?
you can print that. You can print that.
Rinus Michels was, I say, he was the architect. He laid the blueprint out for what became known as total football.
Yep.
And Cruyff was on exactly the same wavelength as him, having been brought up with him with Ajax. I'm talking about the World Cup in 1974, where the Dutch were just a joy to watch. And I say it was Mikel's philosophy, which was then adopted by Cruyff. And for those who don't know what total football is or haven't seen it, it's the closest I can possibly you can think about now would be Man City, the way they play now, the way Barcelona played. In other words, Pep's disciples.
Mm-hmm.
But Guardiola's biggest influence in his professional life was Johan Cruyff, who in turn, his biggest influence was Rinus Michels. So you get the chain now. You understand how this all became as it did. And basically, the total football, I mean, if you can get if anyone watching or what have you, get one of the games, if possible, I have no idea whether it is, from the 74 World Cup, where Holland were winning, got to the final, lost against Germany, shouldn't have done, better side, etc. and you'll see exactly what it is. This is why I laugh at systems nowadays, because they were all great players, and I mean fantastic players. They were all comfortable on the ball. So if someone like centre half Root Kroll makes a run,
Someone slots in.
someone will just drop into the space that he was leaving. He didn't have to be told. It was instinct, because they were clever players. And it was just a joy to watch. You think, what's he doing there? He's the left back. He's playing on the right wing. You know, it was phenomenal. And in the centre of it all is Cruyff. And he's gesticulating, not all the time, because they were all great players. He was the greatest of the great, but they were all great players. So it was just every now and again he'd say, whoosh, you do this. Well, you see him on the pitch talking to him. All of a sudden, a pre-rehearsed move had come, and the right back had come from a left-sided position to score with a diving header or something like that. Or then you get your conventional goal scorers like Johnny Rep, and it was just a joy to watch. And if you love football, you couldn't help but love that team, that philosophy. It was superb. But getting back to the 74 World Cup final, West Germany against Holland. Holland went in front after I think it was a minute, wasn't it? 2 minutes through a penalty. Not one German player touched the ball, because Cruyff was just standing there. Watch it; it's fantastic. You can see him going. What? He was conducting the orchestra. And eventually he gets played in like a whippet. He's off, gets brought down, penalty, and Holland go 1-0 up. And then, of course, the Germans, they had to spud it, didn't they? They actually won.
At the end of the day, the Germans always win.
Yeah, they got a penalty. Brighton, I think it was good. And of course, the winning goal, inevitably by one of the greatest goal scorers I've ever seen live, and that was Gerd Müller. But
the late great Gerd Müller.
Oh, what a sheep!
I've just.
I've always found in my career. This cropped up in a tweet not that long ago, in the last few weeks. In my career, I found the bigger they were, the nicer they were, footballers. Really. Paul Breitner. I was doing a Liverpool game against Bayern, back in Bob Paisley times, obviously. And I said to him after the first leg, I said, look, next week when you play the return leg, if you do all right, if you win, can I do an interview with you? And he said, win, lose, or draw, no problem. Right. Johan Cruyff. It is actually Cruyff, if you want to be absolutely, correct in the pronunciation. When Liverpool played Barcelona in 1976, a two-legged affair, historic, because Liverpool won thanks to a John Toshack goal in the Camp Nou. And the return leg was a week or 2 weeks later. I went down to interview Cruyff at the Holiday Inn, by the Liverpool buildings. And so he eventually came down from his room. I phoned up to his room. Could you tell him we've arranged this? And he came down. Oh, yeah, this is Johan Cruyff, 1976. Greatest player in the world then. Boom, no. Right. So we did the interview, and I took. Everyone remember the Radio City T-shirts that were going around at that time. 194 Radio City. And so I said, look, I can't pay you for your time or your trouble, but here's a T-shirt for your little boy who was Jordi Cruyff, of course, who went to play for Man United.
Yeah.
But I gave him I gave him this T-shirt, you see. So he said, 1 minute. And off he went. I thought, oh, that's it. It's the last I've seen of him, kind of thing. And he was about, he did give me the impression he was going to try and come back, whether he would or he wouldn't, who knows. So off he went. And anyway, he came back probably about 2 minutes later. Bear in mind, he had to go to his room in the lift, come down in the lift. And he came over and he said, and he brought me a Barcelona tie, which he signed and said, and this is for you.
Wow.
Wow. Couldn't believe it.
Oh my God.
Couldn't believe it. Yeah.
That's incredible.
So I was, what, 24, 25 at the time. 25, I think.
Wow. That is incredible. I was just looking.
I'm a little, it doesn't know me from Adam. I'm just peddling my trade, as a Radio City reporter commentator. That was it. And the greatest player in the world, came to do that.
I've just looked. I just had, because talking about Johan Cruyff, a quote sprung to mind that I just wanted to get correct when we were talking about the analogy of total football. This is a quote from Johan Cruyff: "Playing football is very simple, but playing simple football is the hardest thing there is."
Oh, there you go. Because that's exactly what total football was. It was so simple, it's frightening. And that's why today, I listen on Twitter, I join in on Twitter with some of the spaces. And what do you reckon he'll go for today? 4-2-4, 4-2. Frank likes 4-3-3, 4. I'm thinking, God, this is sad. I don't believe in formations. I believe in good players going out and just playing to the best of their abilities, not only physically with the ball or whatever, but also mentally. They know what to do. They know what to do.
Now, Rinus Michels, was this a one and only conversation, or did you speak to him?
Yes, no, one and only time. It was in 1988. It was before the semi-final between Germany and Holland of the European Championships. Martin Tyler, God bless him, he knew, very friendly with a Dutch commentator who was very close to Rinus Michels. And Martin said, how would you fancy an interview with Rinus Michels? But it'll have to be hush-hush because he's having a bit of a barney with the Dutch press at the moment. I said, terrific. So he said, what about your hotel room? I said, yeah, that's fine. Bloody hell, on whatever time it was, say 7:30 at night, something like that. This guy, a big bald guy who's the Dutch commentator, sort of knocks on the door. He said, oh, Elton, I've met him before. Yeah, I did. And he said, Mr. Michels. I said, good. How are you? And he sat down. I think ITV probably, I understand why, probably only used about 2 minutes of that interview, which were pertaining to the match that we were covering live the following day.
Yeah.
But I couldn't resist the opportunity, as you couldn't have resisted in your position now. You had Rinus Michels there. You just wanted, how great was Johan Cruyff? Tell me, where did you come up with this idea of the interchanging of positions on a football field? And whereas all you needed were great players to fulfill your dream. I said, this is what we were talking about. It was epic.
How long? How long was the interview?
Oh, probably 20 minutes, of which 18 minutes, hit the deck. Because there was no relevance to the game the following day. I admit that, no problem. It was a learning curve for me rather than a service for ITV. It was a learning curve for me.
It's a podcast episode.
I took full advantage. You don't get the chance to speak to someone like that.
No, that's a podcast.
Although in a sense I did, because I was so close to Bob Paisley during his time at Liverpool, between 74 certainly and 77, 78 when I was at City. Um, and I just enjoyed listening to him.
Yeah.
And he was in the Renus Michels mold, you know. He really was. I mean, anyone who could come up with a replacement for Kevin Keegan in '77 after the European Cup win, and bring in Kenny Dalglish, that's clever. But cleverer still was the adaptation of Ray Kennedy as, if you like, a reserve team striker to play him left side of midfield. I mean, that was genius. That was nothing more, nothing less. It was genius.
Now, speaking about those great influences on the game of football, I remember during our first conversation on the podcast, you talked about producing a radio show for Bill Shankly later on.
Yeah, I did.
I believe later on in his career or later on in his life.
No, well, hang on, I'll tell you when it was. The year was 1974, and Radio City had just started up. October the 21st, 1974. That's when Radio City began.
Yeah.
And Terry Smith, who was our MD, future director of Liverpool, and he was the driving force behind Radio City, who sadly passed away not too long ago. Very, very sad. And Terry had this idea that Shanks, who just retired, of course, after the '74 Cup final, should do a series of chat shows for Radio City. Of course, everyone went, "Are you sure?" You know, he said, "No, it will be okay." And I've chatted with Bill, and he wants to do it. I said, "Okay." The guy who produced, I would say, 99.9% of Shanks's chat shows, which were recorded between, say, 10 and 12 on a Saturday morning and went out probably for an hour or an hour and a half at 1 o'clock. They had to be recorded because you didn't know what was going to happen, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and also we had a lawyer there just in case something was said, you know, that would contravene the law of slander or, you know, libel.
Yeah.
So yes, this happened, but Wally Scott was Shanks's producer. But one week, Wally said to me, he said, "Listen, I've had enough. I've had enough of him for the moment." He said, "Do you mind producing? I'm taking the day off. I'm taking the week off. Would you mind producing Shanks's show on Saturday?" I said, "Yeah, sure. Who have you lined up as the guest?" And he said, "Lulu, you know, the singer." I said, "Yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll do that." And so I did produce one Shankly show, but the real brain behind the entire operation there, I say the driving force was Terry Smith, but the brain behind it all, the one who put it together, took out the stuff that would offend people, was Wally Scott. Of course, Billy Butler, Wally Scott, the Wally Scott.
I remember you saying, I believe it was the first guest that Shanks had on his radio show was Harold Wilson.
Correct.
He asked Harold Wilson the question, "Who's the first true socialist?" He said, Jesus Christ.
Well, Wilson actually said, would it be Ramsay MacDonald, Bill? And Bill said, "Oh, Jesus Christ." But it was funny because I was, you know, I was stood outside. Wally was in the production booth, you know, talking to him. And I was stood outside. And when he finished, of course, me being the football commentator, you know, someone who he thought could talk football, he made a beeline for me and sort of went, "Elton, he tried to steal my thunder." The Prime Minister. Oh dear. He's something else.
Yeah, so I've heard from the stories. Now, just I think to round up the podcast, I think it's selfish, really. It's selfish, really. But given the position that I'm currently in my career, like I'm very fortunate and very blessed. I've worked to get in the position that I am, and I've had this lucky break essentially, where, as I said, I'm writing print, for one of the most read magazine in sports magazine in the country, and I'm also working as a producer for Radio Merseyside, freelance, of course. Now, how did you find the differences between working print, working in radio, and then, of course,
Well, I worked for a newspaper called the Liverpool Weekly News for 4 years, which was um, obviously a regional paper. It came out once a week on a Thursday, but actually it was quite popular, particularly in the south end of the city, Garston, around there. But it sold well. It really did sell well. Um, but I'd always hankered for radio, and television. I probably thought was a step too far. But I certainly, you know, fancied radio. But when I first went to the Weekly News, that'd be 1970. There was only Radio Merseyside, probably half a dozen, maybe half a dozen, 10, 12 BBC local radio stations all over. So you think, well, crikey, which one could I possibly target? In a few years, once I'd done my groundwork at the Weekly News. And then 3 years after that, all of a sudden came the explosion of independent radio. They were all over the place. The independent radio stations were cropping up. So again, I targeted Radio City. I'd done a bit like yourself. I did a little bit of Radio Merseyside. I was sort of sat alongside Bob Azurdia, the talking chin, reading out the racing results. I did the odd report on South Liverpool from the Northern Premier League as it was then. So I got used to it a little bit, Radio Merseyside. But then when the City opportunity came up, I just applied because I'd known that Eddie Hemmings had turned it down, because I was in the Radio Merseyside offices when Eddie Hemmings phoned the news editor of Radio City, David Maker, and said, "I've decided to stay at Radio Merseyside." Now, Maker was furious, but I thought, whoops. Now, this would be early second, maybe first week in October 1974. In other words, City were going on air on October the 21st.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, woof, this is a blessing. This is what I've been dreaming of. So I literally left Radio Merseyside, went straight to Radio City. I say knocked on the door, but you know what I mean. I went, asked to speak to Mr. Maker, and I did. And I told him exactly what had happened, and I said, "Eddie Hemmings can't do it." I said, "I'm your man, no question." And I had a voice test, etc. Don't sound like I do now, but even still, I said, "Yeah, well, that's okay." And of course, the sports editor, who was intact by then, was Wally. And of course, Wally and I knew each other anyway, so he was quite happy to take me under his wing, mm-hmm, and have me as his number two, as it were. There was only two of us in the sports department. We were helped along the way by some notable people, none more so than Paul Davis, who retired from ITN in this past 12 months. But yeah, I mean, but that's that story of listening to Eddie Hemmings' conversation, or his end of the conversation, and then hightailing it to Radio City.
That was
that's how it happened. That's exactly how it happened.
That was the opportunity. Now, I know previously you've described yourself as a technophobe, but
oh yeah,
obviously I think to be of any success, any chance of being a success, a radio station, arguably, I don't know, I want you to paint that picture for me, needs to have, a modern technology for the times in order to broadcast out to its audiences. Now, you talked a bit about a production booth. I know you were predominantly a reporter and a commentator, but what was it like actually inside the station? What was, some notable experiences or the
It
tech?
was right. Okay, I can make coming from. Um, it was Radio City in its infancy was fantastic because everyone was learning, apart from a few. Nick Pollard, um, who came from Radio Merseyside, who turned out to be arguably um, the best journalist producer of such programs in television over the past 50 years. No question about that. And the chief engineer, a fellow called Peter Duncan, who was building. I mean, you go in to do an early broadcast or a news bulletin or whatever, and they'd be building a studio around you. It was incredible, but the camaraderie at that time amongst all of us who were, the radio's new kids on the block at this station that no one had ever heard of, Radio City. Oh, it was super. It really was. Technically, totally over my head. Um, didn't have a clue. It would be, well, you want to speak, you push that button up, and your microphone will be on.
Yeah.
That was about it. I mean, Wally and I, our first midweek sports special involved a huge bit of tape with various interviews on. And Wally was presenting the show, and I had an interview. We had a couple of studio guests who were Everton A teamers. Young McBride was one. I can't remember the other one. And we had this we had an interview on the tape, on this big tape, big reel to reel thing. We had an interview with Billy Little. One I'd done quite a long one with Steve Coppell, who was a tranmere at the time, and there were others. At one point, Wally was queuing in, halfway through the tape, a 5-minute interview or whatever on the tape, and he'd cue me like that to press the button to start the tape. But when he'd finished talking, the tape with, let's say, Billy Little on would come in, and I must have pressed the wrong button to fast forward and the tape just went like into the air, and I was horrified. And Wally looked at me; he'd gone white, totally white, and so he just had to keep rabbiting on. While it was hopeless. We just had to, due to technical issues, I'm afraid we're going to have to cut short this first edition of Radio City Midweek Supper Special. Until the next time, goodbye, because the tape was all over the studio. I think was probably the start of my complete incompetence when it comes to anything technical. I was frightened of it. I've been frightened of it ever since then. So I really don't get involved. I mean, I remember I did a couple of years at Century Radio around about 2000. I mean, his producer sat opposite me, Dave Heen, who was pressing these buttons. And he said, "You're a bit privileged, I said, "Well, why is that?" He said, "Well, all the other presenters, self-drive the desk themselves." I said, "Well, you might think I'm privileged." I said, "But you're even luckier, because if that was the case, I wouldn't be here, baby." No chance. Just let me talk. That's all. Let me talk. Don't ask me to do things and yeah.
Was that always your aspiration then, essentially, to just talk about sports and report? And essentially, I think, is it fair to say, you just wanted to be a journalist at the heart of it?
Well, yeah, it eventually that eventually came to pass. Yes, I was working as a porter at Broad Green Hospital, going nowhere really in life. Although I thoroughly enjoyed that experience, wonderful experience. And I was just walking down the corridor one day, and I saw there was a newsstand there, where people bought, well, not just a newsstand, but where they bought grapes, some of the visiting or flowers or whatever. And there was Liverpool Weekly News. I thought, oh, interesting. So I bought a copy of this paper. Never heard of it before. And anyway, I went back to the porter's room and I started reading. There's about 10 pages of sport. I thought, wow, this is not... Maybe I should be a journalist and work on this paper. That'd be great. Somebody, when I got home, I drafted a letter out to the managing director, based in Widnes, Ron Carrington, his name was. And I got almost like return of post. I got this, can you come for an interview on Thursday? Something like that. This was say Monday. Can you come for an interview on Thursday? I rang up the office, put Mr. Carrington on Thursday. He said, job interview, basically. And the secretary said, yes, that's over. How would 3 o'clock suit you? Yeah, fine. So I went, and I don't know what we spoke about, to be honest. I can't remember at all what we spoke about, but I know by Friday afternoon I got the job.
Nice.
Unbelievable.
And the rest is history.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Listen, Elton, we've been speaking for well over an hour now, and
it's a lot longer than that.
Yeah,
it's about an hour and a half. I told you, if I was pressing buttons like you, forget it. This wouldn't happen. But I'm not. I'm just sat at home comfortably waiting to watch some football. It's been a very enjoyable way of passing a bit of time. And thank you for inviting me once again.
Listen, the pleasure's mine. Honestly, you are thoroughly one of the podcast guests that I do enjoy speaking to most, just simply because of your experiences and those stories. And as I say, I can't thank you enough for your kind words and your advice throughout the earlier part of my career. And like I always say, you're more than welcome to come on the podcast anytime you'd like. And if anything does come up, if you casually, slip into a conversation, casually mention in a Twitter space that you've spoken to Franz Beckenbauer, I'll be sure to message you and him.
I have actually spoken to Franz Beckenbauer, but it was very, very brief conversation, I have to tell you.
Go on, let's finish.
Can you do an interview? I didn't say Herr Beckenbauer, but maybe I should. And he just said, yes, I will do it in German. And he pissed off.
Listen, Elton, like I say, mate, I genuinely at this point I would consider you a friend because of the advice that you've given me and the fact that you're always available.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
I just want to say thank you. I look forward to the next time that we do this, and God bless. Take care.
And you too, Max. All the best.